Well, thank you. Thank you. You guys are probably going to be able to hear me because I got a big mouth. And I don't expect too many rounds of applause because we're like all holding these. These are representative of what we will stand for, but they're also representative of what we won't stand for. And these pinwheels represent the 544 kids in 2023 that the Children's Center represented. Let's give a big hand for the Children's Center of Medina County. I just said we couldn't give a hand, and there you went and proved me wrong. I want to give a special thanks to Kristen Minicello, who found my story. It was a long journey that kind of brought me to stand here in the gazebo and give my story today. She saw what essentially was a story that was shot by Channel 3 News in Cleveland, and they aired that over Christmas of last year about my story. It was called Road to Redemption. That story actually was nominated for an Emmy Award. How can someone go from the bottom of the barrel, the bottom of a dumpster, to having their story air and be nominated for an Emmy Award? That's an incredible, incredible journey. Let me tell you, at the age of 2, I had a sister who died in a bed right next to me from neglect. At 3, I was put in the Massachusetts foster system, and I bounced in and out of foster homes until I was around 6 years old. Early intervention is very, very important. Consistency is just as important. And while we cannot put our hands together today very easily because of the pinwheels we represent, we can certainly put our voices together. And I'm going to ask all of you in unison to put your voices together with me. Who is going to represent these children in Medina County? We will. Who? We will. One more time. Who's going to represent these kids? We are. We are. That's right. We're going to represent these children today. From age 6 to age 12, I was in a group home. At the age of 12, I was released from that group home back into the dysfunctional home that I was rescued from in the first place. And by the age of 13, I committed my first felony arrest. Do you know that only 16 miles from here is a corridor on Route 83 going through Grafton that has around 1,500 to 2,000 men that are incarcerated because they didn't receive early intervention. Each one of those men were a kid at one point. Each one of them came into this world, but they didn't come in broken. They came in as children. How can we impact people prior to them becoming a statistic? How can we lift our voices and open our hearts and open our resources and break the statistical status quo? Hey. So at the age of 27, I found, well, first of all, at the age of 16, my father was murdered in an arson fire. Okay? And that spun my world. And in and around the streets of Boston, Massachusetts, I took the average story of doing drugs to fit in, hanging around with the wrong people, doing the wrong things. By the age of 27, I found my feet standing in a convenience store in Southern Ohio with my finger in my pocket, telling the clerk to empty the register. And when you do that, they have a place for you. And I spent 5.5 years running around Grafton Correctional, shooting tattoos and hanging with the homeboys and eating ramen noodles and playing the penitentiary game. But after 5.5 years, I got out, and within 8 months of my release, I was facing a life sentence for 2 aggravated burglaries and a robbery and a kidnapping. Now, how do you go from that to where I'm standing today? I began to understand something very, very important in my own life, and that is that if I was ever going to have anything or be anything, I needed to take personal responsibility. I needed to be able to get up every day, look in the mirror, and say, you know what? I'm not a piece of trash just because my childhood was trashy. And I began to educate myself. I was released from prison in 2011. I married the girl that waited for me for 9 years the day that I got out. And by the way, she's the daughter of the chaplain of the Medina County Jail right here in town. That's a story in and of itself. That's a miracle story. Today we have a 6-acre farm with pigs and turkeys and ducks and chickens, and we've got 3 little boys, age 11, 10, and 6. And right now, as a survivor of child abuse, as a survivor of going through that system and feeling isolated, Debbie and I are getting ready to be foster parents. We're right now in the home study to take children in from Summit County, and hopefully one day we'll even be able to be blessed and adopt a child into our home, because we have a table in my kitchen that has an empty chair, and we have room in our hearts to love just one more. How many of you can love just one more? Just one more child. It starts with drawing the line in the sand, like these bikers over here who have the guts to stand here against the status quo and say no more abuse to children, no more being neglected, no more being unheard. I'm flying out to Oklahoma tomorrow, where I'll be going to 4 prisons. I've been from prisons to the state of Maine, all the way to death row in Texas, where I've stood and heard the cries of 186 souls getting ready to be executed. That's humbling. Somewhere in their story, it started with a parent that didn't do their job. So where they won't do their job, the Children's Center of Medina County will do it for them. And I'm here to support that cause today and say, you should too. Thank you for the time to share with you today. God bless you, and thank you, Kristen.